Boss? The room went completely silent. The word bounced off the walls like thunder. Melissa's fork froze midair, her smug smile melting into confusion. Abigail's glass of wine slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. Moses, my father-in-law, turned pale like someone had ripped the ground out from under him. David, my husband, just sat there, blinking hard as if his brain needed time to process what had just happened. The very man they had been fussing over for weeks, the CEO they were desperate to impress, had just walked straight past them, bowed his head slightly, and called me, the woman they treated like a maid, boss. And the worst part? I hadn't even said a word yet. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Let me know where you're watching from. You might just get a shout out in our next video. And if you enjoy jaw-dropping revenge stories like this, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. It started months before that dinner in Texas. Back then, no one would have guessed how it would end, especially not me. When I married David, I thought I was walking into a family filled with love and respect. I couldn't have been more wrong. From the very beginning, his mother Melissa treated me like a stranger who had snuck in through the back door. Abigail, his sister, wasn't any better. They would hand me dirty plates like I was staff, ask me to clean up while they lounged on the couch, and act as if my only value was in serving them. At first, I told myself it was just culture shock, that maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it was just me overthinking. But as time went on, the truth became painfully clear. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as their maid. One Sunday, Melissa even said it out loud. Rachel, make sure you mop the floor before the guests arrive. You're younger, and besides, it's good practice for when you finally get a real job. A real job. If only she knew. But I bit my tongue. I cleaned. I cooked. I did it all while Abigail and Melissa sat gossiping, rolling their eyes whenever I spoke, laughing at my small dreams. I wanted to believe kindness could melt ice. I wanted to prove that patience could win over cruelty. Sometimes David would defend me, but more often than not, he stayed silent. He was caught between his wife and his family, and in that tug of war, his silence hurt more than their words. Still, I told myself, endure. Things would change. People would learn. But deep down, I was breaking. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Melissa had been obsessed for weeks with hosting a dinner for Igor, the CEO of a major tech company. She had somehow convinced him to come to their home. To her, this dinner was her ticket to finally being part of the big leagues. Abigail was buzzing with excitement, convinced that if she played her cards right, Igor might offer her a glamorous position in his company. Rachel, Melissa said the morning of the dinner, make sure the house is spotless. Wear something plain, don't distract from the important guests. I smiled. She had no idea. That night, as I set the table, Melissa kept snapping at me. Faster. No, the forks go the other way. Don't embarrass us, Rachel. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if you were raised in a barn. Abigail smirked, sipping her wine early as she adjusted her dress. You know, Mom, some people just aren't cut out for fine dining. But that's okay. Rachel's good with chores. I swallowed the lump in my throat, biting back my words. The guests began to arrive. Laughter, handshakes, glasses clinking. Melissa hovered over Igor like a starstruck fan, Abigail practically glowing under his attention. Moses boasted about David's career, painting himself as the proud patriarch of a successful family. No one introduced me. I was the shadow moving between rooms, refilling glasses, making sure the food was hot. A maid, not a wife. But then, Igor's eyes landed on me. His face lit up like he had just seen an old friend. He stood from his chair, ignoring Melissa's desperate attempts to keep his attention, and walked straight toward me. Rachel, he said warmly, shaking my hand with both of his. It's been too long. The room froze. Melissa blinked. You know her? Igor chuckled. Know her? She's my boss. That single word, boss, cracked the air in half. Gasps. Wide eyes. Silence heavy enough to drown in. And just like that, the mask began to slip. But what Igor said next, that was the moment everything truly exploded. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. Everyone's faces were frozen in shock, like mannequins in a store window. Igor's words kept ringing in the air. She's my boss. Melissa blinked rapidly, her jaw working like she wanted to say something but couldn't form the words. Abigail's wine-stained lips parted, and she gave a little nervous laugh. Moses gripped his glass so tightly, I thought it would shatter in his hands. David finally found his voice. Wait, what? Igor chuckled, his shoulders shaking. What, you didn't know? Rachel is one of the brightest minds I've ever had the privilege of working with. She doesn't just sign checks, she creates opportunities. Without her, half the deals my company made this year wouldn't have happened. Melissa's face turned beet red. There must be some mistake, she stammered. You must mean someone else. Rachel doesn't work in. Igor cut her off with a sharp glance. Melissa, with all due respect, I don't make mistakes when it comes to the people who run my company. Then he looked back at me with a warm smile. It's good to see you, boss. The title dropped again like a hammer on their pride. Hello, everyone, I said softly, finally speaking. Please enjoy your meal. I didn't explain. Not yet. I wasn't about to rescue them from the pit they had dug for themselves. And the silence that followed? It was worth more than gold. For the next few minutes, Igor kept trying to chat with me, but Melissa awkwardly forced herself into the conversation. She laughed too loud at his jokes, tried to redirect his questions to Abigail, and even bragged about her homemade recipes. Recipes I had cooked myself. Abigail leaned forward, flashing Igor her best smile. So, Igor, you were saying Rachel is involved in the company. That's nice, but I'm actually really interested in business myself. Maybe you and I can talk about some opportunities later. Igor gave her a polite nod, but didn't engage. His eyes drifted back to me, curious, almost amused, like he was waiting for me to explain why I was allowing this circus to continue. But I stayed silent. Inside, though, my heart was racing. Not from fear, but from satisfaction. For months, I had endured their cruelty, their belittling comments, their treatment of me as if I was beneath them. Tonight, the scales had tipped. Tonight, their carefully crafted image of superiority was cracking right before their eyes. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. The less extreme moments passed in awkward waves. Melissa forced small talk. Moses drank too much. Abigail tried to fish for attention. David just sat stiffly, his eyes flicking from Igor to me, clearly torn between embarrassment and confusion. But then came the spark. Igor finally leaned back in his chair, tapped his glass with a spoon, and said with a grin, Since everyone here is so curious, maybe we should tell them, Rachel. How did you end up being the one in charge of my company's biggest project this year? The room erupted in whispers. Melissa gasped audibly. Abigail's eyes widened like saucers. Moses actually coughed into his napkin. And me. I smiled, because I knew this was only the beginning of their shock. Igor's spoon clinked against the glass again, his smile mischievous, his voice loud enough to carry across the table. Come on, Rachel, he said warmly. Don't keep them guessing. Tell them how you pulled off the San Antonio project. That's the kind of story people should hear. Melissa's eyes darted from him to me, her face tightening like a rope being pulled too hard. San Antonio, she repeated, her voice shaky. What project? Abigail leaned forward, her curiosity tangled with irritation. Yes, Rachel. Please, tell us. I rested my napkin gently on the table, letting the silence build. Their eyes were all on me, hungry, desperate, fearful. Igor, I said calmly. Why don't you tell it? You have such a way with stories. Igor laughed, delighted. You see, that's what makes her a good leader. She always shares credit. But since she won't brag, I'll do it for her. He leaned in, lowering his voice just enough to make everyone strain to listen. The San Antonio project was dead. Millions of dollars were at stake. My board was ready to walk away. And then Rachel stepped in. She created a new plan, brought in partners we never dreamed we could land, and turned the whole thing around. Today, that project alone is generating enough profit to cover 3 other failing ventures. The table gasped as if rehearsed. Melissa clutched her pearls. Abigail's painted nails tapped the table in agitation. Moses let out a slow whistle under his breath. And let's be clear, Igor continued. Rachel didn't just help. She led. She gave orders, and the rest of us followed. That's why I call her boss. The word landed again like a boulder. David shifted uncomfortably beside me. For the first time, his voice cracked through the noise. Rachel, why didn't you tell me any of this? I turned to him, my expression calm. Because you weren't listening. His jaw tightened. The word stung, and I knew it. But I wasn't about to soften the truth anymore. For a brief stretch, the room simmered with confusion. Melissa tried to regain control, forcing a laugh. Well, isn't that something? But, Igor, surely you're exaggerating. Rachel? Leading? I mean, she doesn't even, she trailed off, realizing she had nothing left to stand on. Igor's eyes narrowed. Melissa, I assure you, I don't exaggerate when it comes to business. If anything, I'm underplaying her role. A heavy silence fell again, and then it happened. The extreme moment that twisted the knife deeper. Igor reached into his briefcase, pulled out a glossy folder, and slid it across the table, right in front of Melissa. Funny timing, he said casually. We were going to announce this next week, but why not give you all a preview? Rachel just got promoted. The folder bore my name in bold letters. Vice President of Global Operations. Melissa's hand trembled as she flipped it open. Abigail's eyes darted, reading every line like her life depended on it. Moses stared, slack-jawed, as if he'd just witnessed a ghost walk into the room. And David? His face drained of color. The room exploded in disbelief. And that was only the beginning. The sound of Abigail's nails tapping against the table was the only thing breaking the silence. Tap, tap, tap. Faster. Louder. Until finally she pushed the folder away like it was burning her hands. Vice President of Global Operations, she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. This can't be real. You. She jabbed her finger toward me, her words cutting like knives. You can't even fold napkins properly, and now you expect us to believe you run companies? Melissa quickly chimed in, desperate to back her daughter. Igor, with all due respect, surely this is some joke. A publicity stunt. Maybe you're being polite. There's no way she... Melissa. Igor's voice sliced through her protest like a blade. Enough. Do you think I would hand over billions of dollars in operations to someone as a joke? If anything, I should be thanking her for saving me from financial ruin. Melissa's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked like she wanted to scream but didn't dare. Moses, who had been quiet, finally spoke. His tone was surprisingly calm, but his eyes revealed the storm inside. Rachel, he said slowly, why didn't you tell us? Why keep something like this hidden from family? I looked at him directly. Because family doesn't treat me like family. You've treated me like the help. You only see me when you need something. So tell me, why should I have shared my world with you? The words hung heavy. Moses had no reply. David fidgeted beside me, his silence louder than their accusations. The dinner limped on awkwardly. Igor, unfazed, enjoyed his steak while Melissa tried to pour herself another glass of wine with shaking hands. Abigail, however, sat rigid, her eyes flicking back and forth between me and Igor. She was thinking, scheming, and then, as the plates were being cleared, she struck. Rachel, she said sweetly, her tone dripping with fake sugar. I think it's wonderful that you're finally doing something with your life. Really, I do. And since you're now in such an important position, maybe you could help your sister-in-law out. I've always wanted to be in business, you know. I'm sure Igor could find a spot for me at the company, with your recommendation, of course. Melissa's head snapped up, her eyes gleaming with sudden hope. Yes, Abigail. That's a brilliant idea. Rachel, you should help her. It would be the kind thing to do. David looked horrified. Moses muttered something under his breath. Igor's brows furrowed. And me. I smiled, the kind of smile that made Abigail's own falter, because she had no idea what was coming next. The request hung in the air like a heavy perfume, sweet on the outside, suffocating underneath. Abigail had leaned forward, her manicured hands folded together like she was praying for a miracle. Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were sharp, hungry, calculating. I'm sure you wouldn't mind helping family, she added softly. batting her lashes at me the way she always did when she wanted something. Melissa, catching the scent of opportunity, straightened in her chair. Yes, Rachel, she said, her voice regaining that familiar bossy edge. It's about time you used your position for good. Abigail has so much potential. Imagine the difference it would make if you just opened a door for her. David stiffened beside me. Mom, Abigail, maybe this isn't the right time. David, Melissa snapped, cutting him off. This is the right time. Opportunities don't wait. Rachel, if you really are what Igor says you are, then surely this is nothing for you. Just a word from you, and Abigail could have a future. A future? I studied Abigail carefully. She wasn't asking. She was demanding, cloaked in politeness. Her whole life she had been given everything. Money, praise, endless second chances. And here she was again, expecting me to hand her the keys to a kingdom I had bled to build. Igor leaned back, his expression unreadable, though his eyes flickered with interest. He was watching, waiting to see how I would play this game. I folded my napkin slowly, buying myself a moment of silence. The room was so quiet I could hear Melissa's shaky breathing and Moses' knuckles cracking under the table. Finally, I spoke. Abigail, I said softly, what exactly do you want to do in my company? Her face brightened instantly. Well, you know something important. Maybe marketing? Or management. I've always been good with people. And I have ideas, lots of ideas. I just need someone to give me a chance. Do you have a degree? Igor asked suddenly, his tone curious but firm. Abigail faltered. Not exactly. I took some classes, but you know, college isn't for everyone. Melissa jumped in to rescue her daughter. She's smart. Smarter than most of those so-called graduates. Besides, she has the personality for it. That's what matters, right? I could feel Igor's amusement from across the table. He didn't laugh, but his lips twitched. He was leaving this in my hands deliberately. I set my napkin down, leaned forward, and met Abigail's gaze head on. So, you don't have a degree. You don't have work experience. But you want me to recommend you to lead in a billion-dollar company. Abigail shifted uncomfortably, but Melissa clapped her hands together. Yes, exactly. You've summed it up perfectly. The absurdity of her words might have made me laugh if I hadn't endured months of being treated like dirt by these very people. They had mocked me, belittled me, told me I wasn't enough. And now, suddenly, I was their golden ticket. For a brief moment, I allowed the room to breathe. I even smiled, tilting my head as if I were considering it. Abigail's shoulders relaxed. Melissa exhaled with relief. And then I dropped the first bomb. Abigail, I said calmly, if you want a position in my company, you'll have to apply just like everyone else. No shortcuts. No family favors. You'll need to prove yourself. The smile slid off her face. Melissa's mouth opened in outrage. What? Apply. She's your sister-in-law. You can't treat her like some stranger off the street. That's exactly what I'll do, I replied, my tone sharp enough to slice the tension. Because in business, family connections don't pay the bills. Results do. And until Abigail shows she can deliver results, she'll have no place in my world. Abigail's cheeks flushed crimson. You can't be serious. You'd really humiliate me like that? Make me start at the bottom. You already are at the bottom, I said quietly. The words hit harder than I expected. Abigail's eyes filled with angry tears. Melissa gasped like I had slapped her. Moses muttered a curse under his breath, and David rubbed his forehead in embarrassment. Igor broke the silence with a slow clap. Well said, boss. That's exactly why you're in charge. Fair, firm, and unwilling to compromise your standards. I couldn't have answered better myself. Melissa's face twisted, torn between rage and humiliation. Abigail clenched her fists on the table. The air grew hot, suffocating, heavy with tension. And then came the second bombshell, the extreme ending none of them saw coming. Abigail pushed back her chair so violently it screeched against the floor. She stood, glaring at me with fury. You think you're better than me? Fine. I'll show you just how wrong you are. She stormed out of the dining room, her heels pounding against the hardwood. A door slammed somewhere in the house. Melissa jumped to her feet. Rachel, look at what you've done. You've ruined your sister-in-law's future. You should be ashamed. But before I could answer, Igor leaned forward, his voice calm but deadly serious. Actually, Melissa, he said, it's Abigail who should be ashamed. And if she pulls the stunt I think she's about to, you're all going to regret it. The entire table froze. What do you mean? David asked nervously. Igor didn't break eye contact with me as he replied. Let's just say, I've seen desperation before. And Abigail looks like the kind of person who might try something reckless. The word sent a chill crawling down my spine. Because deep down I knew he was right. And whatever Abigail was about to do, it was going to change everything. The silence after Igor's warning felt like the air right before a tornado touches down. Thick, charged, and dangerous. Melissa tried to brush it off with a shaky laugh. Oh, Igor, you're exaggerating. Abigail is upset, that's all. She's dramatic sometimes, but she'll be fine once she cools down. But deep down, I knew better. I'd seen that look in Abigail's eyes before. The one that said she'd rather burn everything down than admit defeat. David excused himself quietly and went to check on her, leaving me at the table with Melissa, Moses, and Igor. Melissa wasted no time. She leaned across the table, her voice sharp. Rachel, do you enjoy humiliating this family? Is that your goal? To make us look small in front of outsiders? I didn't even blink. You made yourselves look small. I just stopped pretending it wasn't true. Her face twisted with rage, but Moses raised his hand, silencing her. Enough. Fighting won't fix this. He turned to Igor. You really think Abigail is going to what? Throw a tantrum? Run off? She's not stupid. Igor sipped his wine slowly, then set the glass down. Stupidity and desperation are cousins, Moses. Don't underestimate either. The words hung heavy, and for a moment no one dared speak. Then, suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Melissa jumped to her feet. Abigail. We all rushed toward the sound. When we reached the hallway, David was standing outside Abigail's old bedroom, his face pale. She's gone, he stammered. The window was wide open, the curtain billowing in the Texas night air. On the floor lay a half-empty wine bottle and Abigail's phone, the screen still lit up with an unfinished message. If she won't help me, I'll make Igor listen another way. Melissa shrieked, clutching her chest. Moses muttered a curse and kicked the wall. David looked like he might collapse. Igor, however, stayed calm. Where does she usually go when she's angry? Melissa shook her head frantically. I don't know. Sometimes the bar, sometimes her friends. But I knew. Downtown, I said quietly. There's a private club. She brags about it all the time. If she thinks she can corner you, Igor, that's where she'll try. Igor's eyes narrowed. Then that's where we're going. The drive was tense, Melissa muttering prayers under her breath. Moses gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him sane. David sat in silence, staring out the window. And me. I sat next to Igor, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to believe Abigail wouldn't cross certain lines. But another part, the part that had endured her jealousy, her entitlement, her cruelty, knew she was capable of anything. When we arrived at the club, the scene was exactly what I feared. Abigail was at the bar, laughing too loudly, already half drunk. She was surrounded by men who clearly enjoyed her desperation for attention. And in her hand was a tablet, Igor's tablet. My blood went cold. Where did she get that? Melissa gasped. Igor's jaw tightened. From my briefcase. I should have locked it, but I never thought, his voice trailed off. Abigail spotted us instantly. Her face lit up with a twisted smile. She stood, holding the tablet high like a prize. Well, look who decided to join the party. Rachel, boss lady herself. And Igor, don't worry, I've got your secret safe with me. Melissa rushed forward. Abigail, give that back right now. But Abigail only laughed. Oh, relax, Mom. I just wanted to show Igor that I can be useful. I looked through his files, and guess what? I found something really interesting. Something the press would pay a lot of money for. The room seemed to shrink around us. Igor stepped forward, his voice calm but icy. Abigail, that tablet contains confidential information. Hand it over before you make a mistake you can't undo. But Abigail's grin widened. Why would I do that? If Rachel won't help me, maybe the media will. Imagine the headlines. CEO's secrets leaked by his own VP's family. That would look good, wouldn't it, Rachel? You'd be ruined. Melissa gasped. Moses swore. David tried to grab her arm, but Abigail jerked away. Don't touch me, she snapped. This is my chance. Finally, my chance to matter. If you all won't give me respect, I'll take it. The men at the bar shifted nervously, sensing the danger. A bartender reached for his phone, and then Abigail's finger hovered over the screen, ready to hit send. For a second, time froze. Then Igor spoke, his voice low, steady, but carrying the weight of steel. Abigail, he said, if you press that button, you won't just destroy me. You'll destroy your entire family, and you'll never recover from it. Her hand trembled. Her eyes darted to Melissa, who was sobbing, then to Moses, whose face was white with fury, then to David, who looked utterly broken. Finally, they landed on me, and for the first time I saw it. Not arrogance, not pride, not even hatred. Fear, but fear mixed with defiance. Her lip quivered. You don't control me. And then she pressed the button. The tablet beeped. A file began uploading. The room erupted. Melissa screamed. Moses lunged. David grabbed at the device. Igor cursed under his breath. And me. I knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The air in that bar turned heavy the instant Abigail's finger hit the screen. The upload bar glowed bright on Igor's tablet. 5%, 12%, 25%. Melissa shrieked. Abigail, stop. Stop this madness. Moses lunged across the floor like a linebacker. But Abigail twisted away, her body clumsy from the wine but still quick enough to dodge him. She clutched the tablet to her chest like a child refusing to give up a toy. David finally managed to grab her wrist. Abigail, listen to me. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, she spat, her words slurring just slightly. You all think I'm useless, but this will make me matter. When people hear what Igor's been hiding, I'll be the one in the spotlight. Igor stepped forward, his calm demeanor cracking at the edges. Abigail, listen to me. That file doesn't just have company secrets. It has personal data, financial records, names of people under legal protection. If that leaks, it could ruin lives. Real lives. You'll have the FBI on your doorstep by tomorrow morning. Abigail froze. For the first time, her bravado faltered. You're bluffing. Igor's eyes hardened. Do I look like a man who bluffs? The upload ticked past 40%. Panic rippled through the room. Melissa was sobbing openly now, clutching her chest. Moses shouted at David to do something. The bartender hovered near the phone, clearly debating whether to call the police. The strangers at the bar shifted uneasily, sensing they were witnessing something far bigger than a family spat. I moved slowly, deliberately, my voice soft but steady. Abigail, look at me. Her eyes flicked toward me, wild and defensive. You want to matter. I get that. You want to be seen, respected. But this, I gestured toward the tablet. This won't make you respected. It'll make you infamous. Do you really want to be remembered as the woman who destroyed her own family's future out of spite? Her lip trembled, but she tightened her grip. At least people would remember me. The upload hit 60%. Melissa collapsed into a chair, sobbing harder. Moses cursed under his breath and grabbed a nearby glass, smashing it against the counter in frustration. David's eyes pleaded with me, silently begging me to fix this. But I didn't move. Not yet. Igor, however, stepped closer. His voice dropped so low that only Abigail and I could hear it. You think you're holding power, but you're not. That tablet has one of the strongest encryption failsafes in the industry. Even if it finishes uploading, all anyone will see is scrambled data. You're not hurting me, Abigail. You're humiliating yourself. Her eyes widened. You're lying. Igor leaned in, his gaze sharp as a blade. Am I? The upload hit 75%, then 80%, then 85%. Melissa looked up through her tears. Rachel, please. Stop her. I don't care how. You're the only one she might listen to. I took a slow breath and walked forward. My heels clicked against the floor, steady, measured, each sound slicing through the chaos. Abigail backed away instinctively, her bravado cracking further with every step I took. "You want me to see you, Abigail?" I said softly. "Fine. I see you. I see the little girl who was handed everything and still felt like it wasn't enough. I see the woman who hides behind her mother's approval because she doesn't know how to stand on her own. And I see the fear in your eyes right now because you know Igor isn't lying. You know you're seconds away from making yourself the biggest fool in this room." The upload hit 95%. For a split second, Abigail's mask shattered completely. Her eyes filled with tears, her breath quick and shaky. She looked down at the tablet, her hand trembling, and then at the last second, she hurled it to the ground. The screen cracked. The upload froze at 97%. The bar dimmed, then disappeared entirely. The room exhaled as one. Melissa wailed in relief. Moses collapsed into a chair. David slid down the wall, his head in his hands. Abigail, however, stood frozen, her chest heaving, her face pale. She looked at me, then at Igor, then at the broken tablet on the floor. "What have I done?" she whispered. For the first time, she looked small, not arrogant, not entitled, just small. The storm seemed to pass. Igor motioned to one of his men, who had discreetly followed us in, to pick up the pieces of the tablet. He gave Abigail a long, hard look. "You're lucky," he said simply. "Luckier than you deserve." Melissa rushed to her daughter's side, cradling her like she was 5 years old again. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." But I knew it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. Abigail had shown just how far she was willing to go, and even if tonight ended without a scandal, the fracture in this family was now deep, raw, and impossible to ignore. We left the club in silence. Melissa clung to Abigail, whispering reassurances. Moses muttered curses under his breath the whole drive home. David sat next to me, his hand brushing mine once, then pulling back, as if he wasn't sure if he had the right to touch me anymore. For a moment, it felt like the storm had ended, like maybe, just maybe, things would calm down. But when we arrived back at the house, the nightmare wasn't over. Because waiting on the porch were 2 black SUVs. And stepping out of the first one was a man in a sharp suit with a government badge hanging from his belt. "Mr. Igor," he said briskly, his eyes cold, "we need to talk about a breach attempt in your company's data system. And we'll also need to speak with your family." The color drained from Melissa's face. Abigail clutched her mother's arm like a drowning woman clinging to driftwood. David's mouth opened, but no words came out. And me, I just stood there, staring at the badge, my heart pounding, because this wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The night air in Texas was usually warm, sometimes sticky, but that evening it felt sharp and cold. As soon as the man with the government badge stepped onto the porch, the whole house seemed to shrink. "Mr. Igor," the man repeated, his tone clipped. "We need to talk." Now, behind him, 2 more agents flanked the steps, their eyes sweeping the property like hawks scanning a field. They weren't just here to chat. They were here to dig. Igor adjusted his tie, his jaw tense but his voice calm. "Of course. Shall we step inside?" The lead agent nodded, though he didn't wait for an invitation before walking past us into the house. His shoes clicked on the marble entryway, a sound that made Melissa wince. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Melissa hovered near Abigail, whispering frantically in her ear. Moses paced the floor like a caged lion. David stood stiff against the wall, his face pale. And me, I sat on the edge of the sofa, my hands folded, trying to look composed even as my stomach twisted in knots. The agent pulled out a folder and flipped it open. "We've detected an attempted breach in the servers of Moscow Tech, Mr. Igor's company. The attempt was traced back to this area. More specifically, he looked up, eyes sharp, to a device that was logged into this household's Wi-Fi." Melissa gasped. Abigail's hand shot up as if to protest, but the agent's gaze pinned her to the spot before she could speak. "Now," he continued, "we're not here to make assumptions. But when a federal flag goes up, we have to investigate every angle. That means every device, every person, and every possible motive. So I'll need full cooperation. Igor's expression didn't flicker. He simply nodded. Of course. You'll have it. The agent's eyes swept the room again, lingering on each of us in turn. When they landed on me, I felt like he could see straight through me. We'll start with interviews, he said. Individually. One by one. Melissa's voice cracked. This is a misunderstanding. We're a respectable family. You can't just storm in here and... Ma'am, the agent cut her off, his tone cool. I can and I will. Unless you prefer I bring a warrant next time, along with a full search team. Her mouth snapped shut. They took Abigail first. She stumbled as she followed them down the hall, her face pale, her hands trembling. Melissa tried to go with her, but the second agent blocked her path. Interviews are private. The door shut behind them, and for a long stretch of time, all we could hear was the faint murmur of voices. Melissa chewed her nails to the quick. Moses muttered under his breath, cursing the damn government. David's jaw tightened more and more with every passing second. Finally, the door opened. Abigail returned, her eyes red and swollen. She didn't look at any of us. She just went straight to the corner of the room and sat down, curling into herself. Next, they called Moses. He swaggered into the room with the agents like he was going to teach them a lesson. But when he came back out nearly an hour later, his face was pale, his shirt clinging with sweat. He didn't speak a word. Then it was Melissa. She cried before she even sat down. Her wails echoed through the hallway, making my chest tighten. By the time she emerged, her mascara was streaked across her cheeks, and she looked years older. Finally, it was David. He squared his shoulders and walked with steady steps, but I could see the fear in his eyes. When he came back, he didn't meet my gaze. He just sat, silent, his hands gripping the edge of the chair until his knuckles turned white. And then, at last, it was me. The lead agent ushered me into a study at the back of the house. The room smelled faintly of old books and cedar wood. He closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. Rachel, isn't it? He asked. Yes. My voice was steady, though inside my chest was a storm. He opened his folder again. Tell me about your relationship with this family. I hesitated. The truth was complicated. Too complicated. But I knew I couldn't afford to stumble here. I married into this family, I said carefully. I've had my struggles with them. They've never exactly accepted me. But I would never do anything to harm Igor or his company. The agent's eyes narrowed. And yet, you're the only one in this household with executive-level access to certain corporate files. Isn't that correct? My stomach dropped. Yes, but nothing, he cut in. That puts you at the top of our suspect list, whether you like it or not. I gripped the edge of my seat. I didn't do this. You have to believe me. If anyone had a reason to lash out tonight, it wasn't me. He leaned forward, his gaze sharp as glass. Then who was it? I froze. I couldn't just throw Abigail under the bus. Not here. Not like this. But the silence stretched. Rachel, the agent said softly, the truth will come out. The only question is whether you'll be the one to tell it, or whether you'll go down with the rest of them. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as dust. Check the tablet, I whispered finally. It wasn't mine. You'll see. He studied me for a long moment, then closed his folder. We'll see, he said. When I returned to the living room, all eyes were on me. Melissa's gaze was sharp, accusing. Moses glared openly. David's face was unreadable. Abigail wouldn't even look up. The agents gathered their things, their presence leaving the house heavier than before. We'll be in touch, the lead agent said as he walked out the door. This investigation isn't over. When the SUVs finally disappeared down the road, the silence that followed was worse than their presence. Melissa stood first. Her voice was shaky but filled with venom. This is your fault, Rachel. All of it. You brought this shame into our home. I stared at her, stunned. What are you talking about? I didn't. You, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. You poisoned this family from the moment you stepped in. And now you've dragged us into federal trouble. Abigail flinched at her mother's words, but said nothing. Moses nodded in agreement, his glare drilling into me. David finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Enough. But Melissa rounded on him. Don't you dare defend her, David. Not now. Not after tonight. David looked torn, his eyes flicking between me and his mother. His lips parted as if to speak, then closed again. I realized then that I was alone. Completely, utterly alone in that room. I went upstairs, my legs trembling with every step. My chest ached, but my mind was racing too fast for tears. I needed to think, to plan, to protect myself. Because if this family decided to make me their scapegoat, I knew exactly where the blame would land. I locked myself in the guest room, sat on the bed, and pressed my palms to my face. That's when I heard it, a faint buzzing. I looked around the room, confused. Then I realized it was coming from under the bed. Heart pounding, I bent down and pulled out a phone I'd never seen before. It was sleek, black, with no case, different from any of ours. The screen lit up with a single message flashing across it. Upload successful. I froze. The tablet had stopped at 97%. But this was different. This phone had finished the job. And someone, somewhere, now had everything. The words on the screen seemed to burn into my eyes. Upload successful. I stared at the glowing letters, my breath caught in my throat. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. The tablet had failed, hadn't it? Abigail had smashed it. Igor said the data was scrambled. So how was this phone showing something different? I tapped the screen with shaking fingers. The message vanished, replaced by a simple login prompt I didn't recognize. No name, no icon, just a blank field waiting for a code. Who put this phone under the bed? Why here, of all places? I shoved it back under the blankets, just as the door creaked open. David stood there, his face pale, his shirt collar undone. Rachel, are you okay? I forced a nod, though my heart was racing. Just tired. It's been a long night. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. His voice was low, urgent. They're all downstairs tearing into each other. Mom's saying you brought the agents here on purpose. Moses is talking about lawyers. Abigail's not talking at all. But I know you didn't do this. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to fall into his arms and let him fix everything. But then I remembered the way he'd hesitated earlier. How his silence had hung in the air when Melissa accused me. Do you? I asked quietly. His jaw tightened. Yes, I know you. I looked at him for a long time, searching his face for any flicker of doubt. He held my gaze steady, but something about his eyes made me uneasy. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. Melissa screamed. Moses shouted something I couldn't make out. David's head snapped toward the door. Stay here, he ordered, then ran out. The second he left, I grabbed the phone again. My fingers hovered over the screen. If the upload really had gone through, the agents weren't just going to circle this house. They were going to tear it apart. And if they found this phone in my room, I shoved it into the back of the drawer and slammed it shut. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to breathe. One problem at a time. Downstairs, the shouting grew louder. I crept halfway down the stairs until I could see the living room. Melissa was in tears again, clutching Abigail's arm. Moses was red-faced, pacing in furious circles. Igor stood calmly in the corner, his silence more terrifying than any shouting. And in the center of it all was Abigail, shaking and wild-eyed, holding a small flash drive between her fingers. You want the truth, she screamed. Fine. Here it is. I made a copy. Everything. And if anyone tries to blame me, I'll take you all down with me. Melissa gasped and tried to snatch the drive, but Abigail jerked back. Moses cursed and lunged, but she slipped out of his reach. Igor finally spoke, his voice like thunder. Give me the drive, Abigail. Now. She laughed, a high-pitched, broken sound. Why should I? So you can bury me while you protect her. She pointed at me on the staircase. She's the reason you all hate me. She's the one you're covering for. Well, not anymore. Her eyes locked on mine, blazing with hatred. Everyone turned to look at me. Melissa's face twisted with rage. Moses clenched his fists. David stepped between us, his arm out as if to shield me. But it didn't matter. The weight of their stares pressed down on me, suffocating. I didn't do this, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the chaos. Abigail's hand tightened around the flash drive. Then explain this. She threw it onto the coffee table. It clattered against the wood, landing in plain sight. The room went silent. Igor stepped forward, picked it up, and examined it. His face betrayed nothing. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Abigail crossed her arms, defiant. "Doesn't matter. What matters is, if you don't start treating me like family, I'll make sure every dirty secret in this drive goes public." Melissa gasped. "Abigail, don't say such things." But Igor wasn't looking at her. He was staring at me. For the first time, I felt real fear in his eyes. Not of Abigail, not of Melissa or Moses, of me, as if somehow, some way I was tied to this mess. I wanted to scream the truth about the phone upstairs, about the upload message, but the words stuck in my throat. If I told them now, they'd all think I planted it myself. The silence stretched until finally, Igor pocketed the flash drive. "We'll verify what's on this," he said quietly. "Until then, no one leaves this house." Melissa looked horrified. Moses cursed again. Abigail smirked like she'd won something. And me, my chest felt like it was caving in. Because upstairs, hidden in my drawer, was the one piece of evidence that could tie me to everything. I slipped back up the stairs before anyone could stop me. My hand shook as I yanked the drawer open. The phone was still there, the screen still glowing faintly. But this time the message had changed. Files synced, awaiting further instructions. And below it, a new message flashed. Location confirmed. Proceed to extraction. My blood ran cold. Someone wasn't just watching. They were coming. I stared at the phone screen until the letters blurred. Location confirmed. Proceed to extraction. Extraction. The word echoed in my head like a gunshot. Whoever was behind this wasn't satisfied with stealing files. They wanted something else. Or worse, they wanted someone. I stuffed the phone into my pocket, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. For a moment, I considered running to Igor, telling him everything. But then I pictured Melissa's accusing finger, Moses's glare, Abigail's smirk. They already thought I was guilty. Handing them this phone would seal my fate. I needed proof. Proof that it wasn't me. Proof of who was really pulling the strings. The night was too quiet as I crept back downstairs. Everyone was still in the living room, locked in a silent standoff. Igor sat stiffly in a chair, the flash drive still in his pocket. Melissa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, muttering prayers under her breath. Moses sat hunched over, fists clenched. Abigail toyed with her wine glass, looking far too satisfied. I slipped into the corner, pretending I'd just gone to the bathroom. No one noticed. For a moment, it seemed calm. The kind of uneasy calm that comes before a storm. Then headlights flashed outside. 2 black SUVs pulled into the driveway, different from the government cars earlier. No badges this time. No official plates. Just shadows. Moses noticed first. He shot to his feet. "What the hell is this?" Igor stood, his eyes narrowing. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice cold and sharp. But before he could reach the door, the front windows lit up with beams of light. Powerful flashlights swept across the living room, blinding us. Melissa screamed. Abigail dropped her glass, the shatter echoing through the room. And then came the pounding. Heavy fists against the front door. "Open up," a voice bellowed. "Now." Igor froze. His jaw clenched. He turned to us. Nobody moved. But Abigail, of course, moved. She stumbled to her feet, her face pale but defiant. "They're here for me, aren't they? You can't stop this." Melissa clutched her daughter's arm. "Don't you dare." The pounding grew louder. The wood groaned under the force. "David," Igor barked. "Get everyone upstairs. Now." David grabbed my hand, his grip firm, and started pulling me toward the staircase. Melissa dragged Abigail behind us, sobbing. Moses brought up the rear, muttering curses. As we reached the landing, the door downstairs splintered. The sound of boots thundered through the foyer. "Clear the room," a voice shouted. Melissa screamed again. Abigail shrieked. David yanked me into the hallway and shoved me toward the guest room. "Lock the door," he hissed. I stumbled inside, slamming the door shut. My hand shook as I turned the lock. My heart hammered so violently it felt like it would burst. Outside, chaos erupted. Shouts, crashes, the sound of furniture breaking. I pressed my back to the wall, trying to breathe. Then I remembered the phone in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen had changed again. Extraction initiated. Locate target, Rachel. The blood drained from my face. My knees went weak. It wasn't the files they were after. It was me. I staggered back, my eyes locked on the glowing words. My throat closed, my breath shallow. Whoever these people were, they weren't here for Igor. Or Melissa. Or even Abigail. They were here for me. And as the sound of boots pounded up the staircase, I knew they were getting closer. The thud of boots against the staircase shook the walls. Each step closer made my chest tighter, my breath shorter. Locate target, Rachel. The words on the phone burned in my hand. Whoever these men were, they weren't here for data, they were here for me. A shadow slid across the crack under the door. Check this one, a voice barked. Deep. Rough. A voice used to giving orders. My knees went weak. I backed away from the door, clutching the phone like it was a weapon, though I knew it was nothing but a curse. The doorknob rattled. Melissa's shrill voice echoed down the hall. Please, please, you have the wrong house. We're just a family. A gunshot cracked through the air. The sound was deafening. Melissa screamed. Abigail shrieked. Stay quiet, another voice growled. The doorknob rattled again. Harder this time. I spun around, desperate. The window. The guest room had a window. Second floor, but it was my only chance. I yanked the curtains aside. Cold night air rushed against my face. The yard below looked miles away. The concrete driveway a jagged trap waiting to break bones. Behind me wood splintered. The door was breaking. I swung a leg over the windowsill, praying for courage I didn't feel. Then a hand clamped over my ankle. I screamed, kicking wildly. The grip tightened. My shoe slipped off, falling into the darkness below. Got her, a voice shouted. Panic exploded in my chest. I grabbed the window frame, clawing at it. My nails bent, my fingers burned, but I held on. Let go. I screamed, thrashing. The man yanked harder. My body jerked back into the room, slamming against the windowsill. Pain shot through my ribs. Another hand grabbed my arm, pinning me. A mask came into view. Black fabric. No eyes visible, just a slit for the mouth. Target secured, the man said flatly. Terror clawed at my throat. Target. That word again. I twisted, my elbow connecting with something solid. The man grunted, his grip loosening for half a second. I didn't think. I dove sideways, crashing into the nightstand. The lamp toppled, shattering. The phone in my hand skidded across the floor. The man lunged. I scrambled to my feet, my body fueled by nothing but adrenaline. I grabbed the lamp's broken base and swung it as hard as I could. The crash of metal against his head made him stumble. Rachel. David's voice. I turned. He was at the end of the hallway, his face pale, a baseball bat clenched in his hands. Run, he shouted. Another man emerged from a bedroom, blocking him. They crashed together, the bat swinging, fists flying. I bolted. My bare feet slapped against the floor, my lungs burning. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. Melissa and Abigail were cowering in a corner of the hall. Melissa clutched her daughter, rocking her like a child. Moses stood in front of them, holding a fireplace poker like it was a sword. Igor appeared from the master bedroom, a pistol in his hand. His face was carved from stone. Downstairs, he ordered. We thundered down the steps together, chaos behind us. Shouts, struggles, the sound of heavy boots chasing. The living room looked like a battlefield. Furniture overturned. Glass shattered. Paper scattered across the floor. Igor pushed us toward the back door. Go. Go now. But before we could reach it, another SUV screeched into the yard. Headlights blazed through the windows. More men poured out, masked, armed, moving with frightening precision. We froze. They had us surrounded. One of the men raised a hand. Hand her over, he barked. Now. Igor's grip on the pistol tightened. His voice was cold. Over my dead body. The man tilted his head. That can be arranged. The air was electric, charged with terror. Melissa sobbed. Abigail clutched her mother. Moses muttered a prayer under his breath. David stumbled down the stairs, blood on his face but still clutching the bat. And me. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to me. The intruders, the family, even Igor. I was the center of it all. The man in charge pointed directly at me. You have 10 seconds. Hand her over, or everyone in this house dies. The room went silent. Igor's eyes flicked to mine. Cold. Calculating. Weighing. Melissa whimpered. Moses cursed. David's chest heaved as he lifted the bat again. I felt the weight of their stares pressing down, suffocating me. And then Igor raised his pistol. But not at them. At me. The cold barrel of Igor's pistol pointed directly at me. For a heartbeat, the world stopped moving. No shouts. No footsteps. Just the sound of my own ragged breathing. Hand her over. The masked intruder barked again, his rifle raised. 10 seconds. Igor's finger tightened on the trigger. His face was unreadable, his eyes 2 shards of ice. Melissa screamed. Igor, no. David staggered forward, blood dripping from his temple. Dad, what are you doing? Moses lifted the fireplace poker like he was ready to charge. Abigail clutched her mother, sobbing hysterically. I couldn't move. My knees locked, my chest heaving. My mind scrambled, searching for reason. Why would Igor aim at me? Then he spoke. They're here for her. Not us. The room froze. Melissa's sobs turned to stunned silence. David's grip on the bat faltered. Moses lowered the poker an inch. What? I whispered. Igor didn't look at me. His eyes stayed locked on the intruders. This isn't about me. It never was. It's about you, Rachel. My heart slammed against my ribs. That's insane. I'm nobody. No, he cut me off, his voice sharp. You're not nobody. You've been watched for months. Every call, every email. You think I don't know? They've been circling this family because of you. The leader of the intruders barked again. Time's up. Hand her over. Igor cocked the pistol, his jaw tight. You'll take her over my corpse. Melissa wailed. Why are you protecting her? She's ruined us. But I wasn't listening. My mind was spinning back to the phone under the bed. The glowing words. Location confirmed. Proceed to extraction. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. They hadn't stumbled onto me by accident. They had planted me. Or worse, someone had set me up. The intruders moved closer. Flashlights cut through the broken windows. The sound of boots crunched on the gravel outside. David stepped in front of me, the bat trembling in his hands. His voice cracked. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. The leader laughed. That can be arranged. A shot rang out. Not from the intruders. From Igor's gun. The bullet whizzed past me, shattering the lamp beside the sofa. The crash sent Melissa into hysterics. Igor, Moses roared. You'll kill us all. But Igor didn't flinch. He fired again, this time at the intruder's feet. You want her? Come and take her. Chaos erupted. The masked men stormed inside, rifles raised. Moses swung the poker, connecting with one man's arm. David lunged with the bat, cracking another across the ribs. Melissa dragged Abigail toward the staircase, shrieking all the while. I stood frozen, my body locked, until a hand grabbed me from behind. I spun Igor. His grip was iron. Run, he hissed. What? I said run. He shoved me hard toward the kitchen. My legs stumbled but caught the motion. I bolted, ducking under the gunfire that erupted behind me. Shouts, crashes, screams. The kitchen door slammed open ahead. Another masked man stepped through, rifle raised. I froze, and then bang. The man dropped. Igor stood behind me, his pistol smoking. Go, he barked. I ran. Out the back door, into the cold night. My bare feet slapped against the concrete, my lungs burning. Headlights blazed again. Another SUV screeched into the yard. My chest seized. There were more of them. But the doors didn't open. Instead, the driver's window rolled down. A woman leaned out, her hair tied tight, her eyes sharp. A badge flashed in her hand. Federal agents, she shouted. Get down. Floodlights snapped on, blinding the yard. Armed officers poured out of black vans, rifles raised, not masks this time, but uniforms. The intruders inside the house shouted in panic. Gunfire crackled. Chaos exploded. I dropped to the ground, covering my head. Boots thundered past me, federal agents swarming the yard, shouting commands. Clear the East Wing. Get those civilians out. Suspects armed and hostile. The world was noise and light and terror. Hands grabbed my shoulders, pulling me up. An agent's voice barked in my ear. Are you Rachel? I nodded, my voice gone. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Now. They hustled me toward the van. My eyes darted back to the house. Melissa and Abigail were dragged out screaming. Moses stumbled, his hands zip-tied. David was carried by 2 agents, blood streaming down his face. And Igor was nowhere to be seen. Wait, I cried, twisting. Where is he? The agent's grip tightened. Ma'am, get in the van. Now. I fought against it, my eyes scouring the yard. And then I saw him. Igor, standing in the doorway of the wrecked house. His pistol gone. His hands raised. His eyes locked on me. And for the first time since I'd known him, he looked defeated. The agents swarmed him, forcing him to the ground. I screamed, but the van door slammed shut, cutting off the sound. Inside, the woman with the badge turned to me. Her voice was calm but firm. You're safe now, Rachel. But you need to understand something. I swallowed hard, my chest heaving. What? Her eyes locked on mine. They weren't here for Igor. Or his company. They were here for you. And we need to know why. The engine roared. The van sped away. The house grew smaller in the distance, swallowed by flashing lights and chaos. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, my hands trembling. I thought marrying into this family had been my biggest mistake. But now I realized the real nightmare was only just beginning.